welcome to this edition of Easton Park Talk. I'm here with our neighbor, Hailey Pyle of Birth with Hailey.
Hello.
Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I've been really excited to chat with you, mostly because, we don't have children.
Okay.
I know almost nothing about having children
Yeah.
and the process of, and you're a doula.
Yeah.
Can you explain to the rest of us who don't know what a doula is, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like there's a long version and a short version of what a doula does. But there's kind of different types of doulas.
Okay.
There's a birth doula and a postpartum doula. So I do both. So I can explain kind of what both do. I do birth mostly. And that's definitely like where my heart and passion is. So that's probably what I'll speak about most today. But, but basically a doula is hired by women who are giving birth. Doesn't matter if it's first, second, third, fourth, fifth baby. Doulas serve all types of people to really walk with them through their pregnancies, through their birth, and then into postpartum. So we provide emotional, informational, and physical support. And physical, I know sounds weird, so I'll kind of explain what that looks like. But emotional, informational, and physical support just throughout wherever these moms find us in their journey, we can kind of meet them where they are and provide all of that information. So emotional support, I think, is pretty obvious what that looks like. We, are truly like friends and kind of like mentors and coaches to our clients. Informational. So we are fully trained. Most of us are trained by like an organization and become certified. And so that's kind of a part of it. But then over time, we keep up with all of the latest research, the evidence, the science, what's going on in the city that we serve at large, like at the different hospitals, at the different clinics, things like that. And we provide that information to our clients. And then physical support really comes during pregnancy and then during birth. So during pregnancy, we can give people different types of exercises and things that they can do to make sure that their babies are optimally placed in their pelvises, and also just make sure that their pregnancies are comfortable, things like that. And then during the birth, we do a lot of hands-on support. So massages, hip squeezes, different things like that. So that's kind of where the physical aspect comes in.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's kind of more geared towards the birth doula side. And then postpartum doulas are actually, so they are hired for just the postpartum period. So after people give birth, we come into your home and we can essentially help you take care of your baby. So we're different than nannies. So we're not going to take care of your baby for you. But we're going to educate you on, breastfeeding, swaddling, soothing techniques. We're going to strategize with you on how you can get the most sleep as the mom. So it's a lot of education, in real time, which is super, super helpful.
Yeah.
And then it's also, we can do a little bit of light housework and cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. So we really care for the family as a whole, really with the mother in mind, because postpartum is so hard and really needs a lot of support. So postpartum doulas can work anywhere with a mom anywhere from birth till 3 or 4 months or even longer than that. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure type of thing. But yeah, so that's kind of the long version of what a doula is.
That's awesome. I think so I guess where I'm not knowledgeable is are you doing home births? Can you help in a hospital? All of the above?
Yeah, great question. All of the above. I would say, there are some doulas that like to niche down and prefer only to do one type of birth. And, that just serves them and they are able to serve their clients better in that environment for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But for me, and for most doulas, I would say too, most people give birth in the hospital. 99% of people statistically give birth in the hospital. So most of what we do is in the hospital. So yes, mostly hospital, but we can absolutely do any type of birth that you could possibly want. I've heard of doulas going to births in the forest alongside the river, things like that. So that can happen too. But
That's cool.
But yeah, home birth center, hospital, those are the most common places that people give birth, but hospital being by far the most common.
That's awesome to hear, because I was I don't know. I just feel like and no judgment. I just, based on what I know, like my home, I love my home, but like a child, I mean, that's like a serious situation. It's not like, I feel like things could go very wrong. And like just being in a really clean, sterile, doctor-filled hospital just seems like not a bad place to, but I do think it would be really cool to have like someone on your team that is not a nurse, but like your person who you know and feel comfortable with, who maybe isn't your husband. And I can totally get that of like having another female, like, however, are there men doulas?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, for sure. I think it's less common, but absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know why there wouldn't be, but you just,
I know you don't hear about it,
and you don't like think about it. But that, I mean,
absolutely, there are.
Of course, there would be.
Yeah.
So what have you always? Is this like your dream as a child, or like what brought you to this?
Yeah, funny story or funny question, and kind of a funny story. Not really a funny story, but no, I did not always dream of being a doula. I didn't know what a doula was until fairly recently, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So I actually went to college. I got a business degree. Well, I started out in nutrition, which was a little bit kind of like medically, and I liked it. And I liked the science part. So there was like some part of me that was like being tugged, like the more kind of like, and I'm not saying doulas are medical, because by the way, they're not. We are not medical professionals. Okay. That's a big differentiation between like us and nurses and doctors and midwives. Okay. But I'm really interested in, I've always been really interested in like biology and science and kind of like the medical side of like life. Okay. So that was always kind of like a tug for me. And then, you know, I got my business degree. And then for some reason, probably it was in college, I started getting really interested in birth just in general. Like I just was really interested in it. The medical side, the sciencey side, but also like giving birth is a monumental event for anybody. Bringing a child into the world is a big deal. So there's this big like emotional kind of like heart side of it too that was interesting to me. So I started listening to podcasts. There's this great podcast called The Birth Hour, which is basically just hundreds of episodes of women telling their birth stories.
Okay.
That was actually how I got into loving birth. Hearing women tell their stories over and over again and just being like, wow, this is so cool. Like, this is just such a cool process. So I was always interested in it. Through, I think, listening to The Birth Hour, I learned what a doula was, because they would be like, oh, and I had my doula with me. And so I kind of learned, oh, okay, that's a doula. So that was just kind of like a side interest, like side hobby for me. But I get a job in actually in advertising right when I graduated college. I did advertising for a couple years, and then I did like marketing in-house as well. So I worked for an agency, and then I went in-house, and then I completely switched to recruiting. So I went into HR.
Got it.
I had my corporate job. Yep, there it is.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I had my corporate jobs for a long time. Like I think it was almost like 8-9 years of working corporate. And then I got pregnant.
Oh, you worked for Deloitte.
Yeah. Corporate.
Okay. Yeah. Way corporate. That's about as corporate gets.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
I was like the corporate,
girly
for sure.
You could be making corporate girly TikToks.
Oh, totally. Like I went,
making dreams come true.
Yeah. Now I'm making birth TikToks. But yeah, I was corporate for sure. Then, and I, it was fine, right? Like working my corporate job, like it was fine. I didn't love it. Like it paid the bills. Like, but, I was good at it. It was fine. I got married, got pregnant, had my baby, had a daughter, had my daughter 2 years ago. And I just was like, I can't do this corporate thing anymore, because I just can't do it. Like it was really hard for me to give my time to that. And take time away from my daughter, who was so little, and I went back to work so quick. And so that was part of why I decided to make a shift into really that was my decision to become an entrepreneur, because then I could, make my own hours, kind of make my own schedule, work, all the things. But I was still, all this time being a corporate girly, I was still very much like enamored with birth. And so when I was thinking through, so then I got pregnant, had my baby, and I was like, if I'm still, I learned what a doula was, and I was like, this is great. I don't have to go back to school to become a doula. I can get my training, out of the way, but I don't have to go back to school for 2 years.
Sure,
it's different from than becoming a nurse.
Yeah.
So I was like, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I had my baby,
left your corporate job.
Yes.
Like you were like kind of getting through the end of that.
Yes. So, okay. In the back of my mind, when I was pregnant and giving birth, I was like, if I still love birth after I have my own birth,
oh yeah, sure,
then I could go into this as a career field. Like I wanted to be sure that I wasn't interested in it more because it's something that I'm going through or because something that I love, like outside of a personal experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that all happened. I did go back to my corporate job, postpartum. I did that for about a year. And in that time period, there was like a big transformational shift in me. And I was like, I don't want to do this job anymore. And so I'm going to make a plan to leave and start my own business. And here we are, basically.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, and that's like, it's hard. Entrepreneurship's really hard.
Yeah.
We're entrepreneurs. We own and run our business all day, every day, all the time. And it is, Steve made a joke one time at a wedding for one of his best friends that he like quit his job, and Steve was the best man. So Matt had quit his job, and he was like, yeah, I just am really looking forward to all the free time. And Steve like laughed. He was like, we laughed, and because like there is no free time, but when it's something that you like, that you love and you're passionate about, it doesn't, sometimes it feels like work, but you got to work. We have to work.
Oh, exactly.
You might as well do something
Yeah.
Like meaningful.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's single-handedly one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
Cool.
And it's actually really conducive because I also wanted, part of the reason I wanted to do this was because I wanted to be with my daughter more also.
Yeah.
And I know what you just said, you're like, well, entrepreneurs work so much. That is so true. But being a birth doula and taking on, a sustainable amount of clients a month, I go for, I sometimes go to a birth for like 28 hours. And then I don't have another birth for 3 more weeks. And so I'm able to like kind of stay home and be with my daughter and kind of, it's like really the best of both worlds. Like it gets crazy. Yeah. And I get like, whoa, that was a lot. And I was just working continuously with no sleep and no breaks and barely any sleep for 2 days.
Right.
And then I get to sleep in my bed. And then the next morning I get to like stay at home with my daughter. So it's like, it really is perfect.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Birth, I would assume, can be stressful sometimes, probably most of the time.
Yeah.
Have you had any just like memorable, good or bad, like just experiences that you've been through?
Yeah, for sure. Memorable experiences. I mean, to be honest, every birth that I go to is memorable.
Sure.
In its own way. But, I would have to say like, the most memorable births and probably my favorite births are the ones that, go really well. Yeah, of course. It doesn't happen super often. That's I could like go on a tangent about that too. But yeah, I recently, like last Friday, I guess a week ago, today's Friday. Yeah. Last Friday, a mom called me at 3 a.m. We meet at the hospital at, about 6. And like, she's just like having contractions, just going through, like, she's just doing an amazing job, so focused, and has her baby like an hour later, just like, whoa, here it is. Like, so it was really, really just a wonderful birth. So that's top of mind. It was recently, but it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I don't know why it's like on my feed. Again, we don't have children, but like going through TikToks, going through shorts, things like that, like hearing moms talk about recently giving birth and they're like, I'm going to tell you people this because this is the stuff that people don't talk about. Like, how important do you think that communication and messaging is to moms who are about to be moms for the first time?
Yeah. I think for first time moms, it's really still abstract, even if you hear stuff like that beforehand until you go through it your own self. So I don't like, it's like, it's important, but I also think in some ways it kind of goes like over people's heads. Yeah. Because it really is like, you just don't know until you know.
Until you've been through it.
Yeah. Until you've been through it. And that's why hiring a doula is so great, because you're going through it and you're like, holy shit, this is scary. And this is crazy. And this isn't what I was expecting it to be. And you have somebody who's really knowledgeable in what's going on, maybe even knows the staff, like maybe even has a relationship with the nurse or the doctor. Right. And it just, even like when shit's hitting the fan and things are getting crazy, like just the comfort of having somebody that you know really well, that's been with you throughout your whole entire labor, that knows the environment that you're in, just that alone is so helpful, I think.
Yeah, like it's going to be okay coming from you is a lot different than like a doctor who's, scrubbed up and, they're like, yeah, it's technically it's going to be fine. But maybe like because you're managing multiple levels, right? So like emotionally you're like, hey, like you're also going to be okay.
Yeah.
In your mind, your body, like everything's gonna be okay. It just goes a long way from someone that you trust who's been through it.
Yeah.
So are most doulas mothers?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. No, I wouldn't say most are mothers. Yeah, we have a good amount of doulas that don't have any children.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think it's kind of a little bit weird to me because people do think that doulas should be mothers, and I think it adds a layer of, I think it does
empathy?
add maybe like it adds a layer of like empathy, or just like, clients feel like it's just it's a relatability factor.
Yeah.
But I mean, not all nurses have kids.
Right.
Not all doctors have kids. In fact, a lot of them don't.
Right.
So it's an interesting like standard, I feel like, that doulas are held to. That's maybe a little bit unfair.
I think so. Because like, I mean, I could understand like the empathy part of it,
the relatability piece.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, if you've been through like 100 births,
yeah,
you probably know, like, I mean, even probably 3 births. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Is it? Do you find having children different, like from like maybe a mom who's had like she's having her second child? Is there like more confidence going into that? Like, yeah. I know what this is. Like,
yeah. For sure. I mean, I think there is a level of confidence, but I will say like a lot of the second, third, fourth time moms that I work with, they're hiring me because they didn't have a good experience the first time. So that adds a little bit of a layer of, I think, anxiety and like worry that it's going to go badly again. So I think, yes, there's more confidence. I think it makes their postpartum experience a lot easier.
Yeah.
Having done it before.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of confidence there. But with birth, I think yes and no. If they had a really like good birth the first time, like they probably feel good going into it the second time. But again, like a lot of people hire doulas because they have some kind of fear or discomfort or worries that they want to try to like mitigate and bring down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of another level of like it's like having another advocate in the room that like really knows the process. Like you said, probably knows some of the team. Dad may really be excited and there, or maybe there's not, or, significant other, or maybe she's doing it on her own.
Yeah.
But like to have just in addition to whatever is already there, like a knowledgeable advocate, it just feels really powerful.
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest difference between like somebody's partner and a doula. I mean, there's a lot of differences, but I'm talking about like in the context of being in the room. Yeah. Like the doula, it's like ideally we meet several times during pregnancy, and I'm available a lot during pregnancy. So we talk a lot. So we have a really good rapport and a really good relationship. And then on top of that, like, I also like know what to, like, I've seen this many, many times before. I'm listening to the doctor, the nurse. Like sometimes they come in and they're like, okay, we're just going to do this real quick. And it's like, wait, but do you want that? Partners aren't really like, they're not trained to listen for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like why doulas are so valuable in the room in addition to partners. And then we also, like, honestly, a lot of what I do is coaching up partners too.
Yeah, of course.
Like I provide a lot of emotional support for them so that they can be solid and strong and, be what they need to be for their partner.
Right.
But then I also can teach them how to like do the hip squeeze and, how to, just little things like that. It's a lot of actually coaching and like providing emotional support for the partner too.
Yeah. And I think that's like such a special moment I'm assuming for like, for you to be helping and massaging and like squeezing hips and what have you, but like to have your partner do that, like what a very intimate moment while you're having the your child together.
Yeah.
There's something that you said that I want to go back to because I think it's really, really important in medical care and in all aspects of medical care is like, wait, but do you want that?
Yeah.
As I think because if you don't know, if you're having your first kid and they're like, okay, now we're going to do this. Most people are just like a passenger on the bus. You're like, yeah, go ahead. I don't know.
Yeah.
So like what are some things that moms may choose maybe they don't want to have done in those moments?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a kind of a loaded question. Because there's, I think that's again, a big reason why doulas are so valuable, because these doctors and nurses, they're just, not all of them are like this, but a lot of them are. They're just kind of on their like, they kind of just go down their like laundry list of things that we do in every birth. And not everybody wants all of those things. Right. And there are reasons why people don't want those things. And I'll give without getting too much like in the weeds, but I'll give an example of something that's very common that I see offered almost at every birth, and I would say almost at every like long labor. So like think a really long induction, or like a somebody who's been at the hospital for a while. I almost always see this one intervention be offered, and it is artificially breaking water. Okay. So like it's so common that people think that they have to have their water artificially broken in order to have their baby, and there are risks that come with that. So when you don't have your water anymore, you're at a higher risk of infection. You're at a higher, depending on where you are in your labor, you have a higher risk of cord prolapse, which again, I don't want to get like too far into the weeds here, but anyway, there are risks that come with it. There are also benefits to it in certain situations, but it's not necessarily something that needs to be offered to everyone. Yeah. And I see it offered a lot to almost everyone. Interesting. And it is one of those things. It's just kind of routine. A doctor will come in and be like, okay, like, so-and-so, we're going to break your water. And it's not like hey, let's consider breaking your water because of these reasons. Sure. And these are the risks, so that you can make an informed choice to do that. Right. It's a lot of times doctors are just like, let's just break your water and let's just do it. And so that's where it's like, if you are just kind of you kind of get doe-eyed. And, I've seen the strongest, like most headstrong moms just be like, whoa, like this is happening to me, And so a doula being like, well, hold on, like, is that something that you want? And again, if you hire me early in your pregnancy, even if you hire me the day before you give birth, we'll talk about all this stuff real quick. But ideally you would know that you don't want that ahead of time, and you would listen and you would hear it, be like, oh, okay, I don't want that. But occasionally that doesn't happen. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on. Do you want that? And then let's have a conversation about it.
Do you feel that like the medical staff is open and like glad that you're in the room?
Honestly, for the most part, yes.
Awesome.
For the most part, yes. And my doula style is like very nobody wants to like fight. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
beautiful moment. Yeah. It's already stressful.
Yeah. Like I come in and my vibe is like, I stay calm. I bring the energy down. I'm not an energy escalator. I make sure that so I bring the energy down. And I am very like, I'm just kind and respectful. And, I view myself as like, we're all on the same team with our client or our patient, if you're the nurse and the doctor, with their best interest in mind. And that's where I come from. And I also like, I don't view medical staff as bad.
Yeah. Of course.
And so having that mindset, like I would say, I think the vibe, the nurses and the doctors that come into my clients' rooms know very quickly that like we're all going to be all right. Yeah. Like, and they're happy that I'm there. I've like had many doctors and nurses be like, thank you so much. Like you did a great job. Like awesome. Yada, yada, yada. So yes, for the most part, yes.
Very cool. Yeah. Cause I mean, like you said, it's already a very highly charged situation in general. Just like fear, excitement, terror of the unknown, like pain really escalates a lot of emotion. And so, to have doula versus nurse or whatever would probably not be the best.
Not helpful.
Yeah, no, like never. However, it is, I think, so great that you're there to advocate, to be like, well, wait, hold on. This doesn't have to be done. This is a choice for you. Unless it's probably, I'm sure, medically necessary, where I'm sure there are situations where like, no, this is happening now because of whatever. But I do agree, like, here's the option to do this. Here's the risks. Here's the reasons that you would. And then people can make their own decision. Yeah.
And the vast majority of interventions that are offered, like truly 99.9% of the interventions that are offered are not emergencies. Like for the most part, like don't get me wrong, there are emergencies that happen, but for the most part, it's like hey, like let's talk about this. It can be that kind of a situation. Yeah. So for the most part, you can slow down the room. Let's have a conversation about it. I, in my head, am thinking through like what are the risks and making sure that the doctor mentions them. If not, sometimes I'll ask, I'll be like, hey client, do you want to hear about, these extra things that are going to happen with this intervention, right? And then usually the doctors are like, oh, right. And then they'll like say it,
they're on autopilot too. And they're going from, I think the other really cool thing is you're there with one mom. Mm-hmm. Those doctors and nurses have a floor of moms, right? Like multiple at one time. So it's almost impossible to expect them to have, like, to not just, like you said, like laundry list or checklist, what they have to go through. Because they got a lady in the next room and the next room, and they're all needed. So like to have you as like, you're like, you are my focus right now.
Yeah. And there's actually data that shows that having continuous support from one person, like throughout the entirety of the labor and the birth, like so basically continuous support means that like what you just said, I'm focused on you and I'm not focused on anybody else. There's actually data to show that yields better outcomes for people.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know.
And it's not only like, this might be a hippie thing to say.
Oh, I love it. Bring on the hippie.
I do think that, like there's in utero stress, right? Like while you're pregnant. And I feel like even for the child, like being born in a more calm environment, like it has to make a difference. I assume.
I don't think that's a hippie thing to say at all. I think that's a logical thing to say. And I totally agree. Yes. Like our stress, I mean, we like as mothers, like carrying our children, we share blood supply, we share hormones. So cortisol from us is going to go to our baby. And, I hesitate a little bit talking about stress affecting babies because I don't want to like shame anybody.
Sure, of course.
Because people go through terrible things when they're pregnant.
Of course.
And people have traumatic births, right? So I don't want anyone to like hear this and think like, oh, well, dang it, I should have done something different. But you're 100% right. Like what we feel does affect our babies, and our babies would prefer to be born in a calm environment. That would be ideal. When that does happen, like we see babies born and they like pink up and perk up, but they don't even cry. Like they just kind of wince and gurgle and like, but they're like, cool, happy to be here. Like
happy birthday.
Seriously.
It's my birthday party.
Like, I've seen that many times with a very like calm, good environment. So it definitely makes a difference.
Cool. That's really cool. And I mean, and there's going to be moments like just like that child will go through stress in their lives too, but
sure.
It is, I just think it's really cool to have one person that's dedicated to you. And like you said, helping partners as well, which super stressful for the partner too. I mean, I remember, and this is like so outside of the normal of like being in the room. I've never been in a room with a birth.
Yeah.
But our nephews were born and I remember Briggs, and they wanted babies so bad. And it was like, it was a hard journey for Dylan and Lindsay. They now have 3 boys. Oh. Wonderful.
Yeah.
But I remember when Briggs, our oldest, was being born, it was like, just in the wait, we're just like, oh my, because you just don't know. And Lindsay was really cool. She had, I think they spent just time, her and Dylan and Briggs, like, I think it was like an hour where it was just them. It was just like family moment.
The golden hour.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And, we all waited. We knew everything was fine and, happy, healthy. Everything was good. But you're just like, that's so beautiful.
Ugh. It really is. But yeah, I mean, it's also stressful, and you have lots of family dynamics and people involved and aunts and uncles and all the, grandmas and grandpas becoming, grandmas and grandpas for the first time. So yeah, it's a very emotionally charged event, and hopefully it's a beautiful event also on the other side of it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's always the goal, right? Yeah. I think it's interesting too, that like, there's so much, who do you want to be in the room with you? It's a very vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
Like probably one of the most vulnerable moments of your life. And like, maybe you don't want your husband's dad in the room.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like,
would not recommend that.
It's just, I'm sure though that there's some people that are like, what do you mean I can't be in the room?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like, and you're just like, no.
Yeah. I recommend that. I mean, I think as the client, you should pick, as the mom, you should be able to pick whoever you want. But, I've heard very wise midwives say, like, for every person you have extra in the room, add an hour onto your labor.
Oof.
Yeah. So be careful.
So can you explain to me the difference between a midwife and a doula?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So midwives are like, they're similar to like an advanced degree nurse.
Okay.
So think like a nurse practitioner, but they specialize in catching babies, all things catching babies. So that's just like all, that's basically all they do. They can also provide like well woman care and kind of the same stuff you'd go see like your OBGYN for like a yearly. They can also do that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Depending on their licensure, but again, we don't need to get in the weeds. But yeah, they're medical professionals. So like, you know, they're trained in all the risks, all the things that can happen bad. They, you know, do all of that stuff. And then a doula is not a medical professional. So like I can't catch your baby. I mean, if I was the only one there and I needed to do what I needed to do, sure, I could help your baby come out. But that is not what I'm trained to do. I'm not a medical professional. So I'm trained in kind of like, again, like the latest evidence, all the science, all the things. But my expertise is not in anything medical.
Got it. Okay. And I didn't realize that midwives were like, like a nurse practitioner type level. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And there are tons of midwives that work in the hospitals that you probably just don't even realize. But it's not all OBs. It's, you know, a bunch of midwives and, you know, again, not to get like super graphic, but like sometimes when you have a baby, you tear like on, you know, your nether regions. Midwives are totally like equipped to suture that up and do all the things.
So is like a midwife, do you request a midwife or is that just like a normal part of the birthing team?
No, it's not really. So it's interesting because in other first world countries like Canada and Australia, if you are like at the hospitals, if you are a low risk, like if you're like a healthy mom, you by default get seen by midwives. By default. And then whenever you become more high risk, then you go see an OB. In the States, pretty much everybody sees an OB, unless you specially request it. But there are, and in Austin as well, there are like special practices that are just midwives. And they see you throughout your whole pregnancy. And then when you go into labor, you can still go to the hospital and you'd see those midwives that you saw throughout your whole pregnancy. So
neat.
Midwives tend to be, so midwives really, I mean, not all of them. Midwives do like some higher risk stuff in the hospital, but they tend to be more on like they treat like healthy moms that don't have any like complications or like things that make them a higher risk patient.
Got it.
But that's kind of what they specialize in.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And people who want most people who want a low intervention, like natural birth with like no epidural, things like that, they tend to seek out midwives for their care. And then they have better, I don't want to say better outcomes, but they have usually they get the birth that they want more likely with midwives. Midwives are a lot more patient. They're a little bit more like chill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like they're not coming in and being like, all right, we're going to break the water.
Yeah, and I don't like, there are OBs that are also chill, okay?
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But for the most part, I'm speaking very generally.
Of course.
right now, but.
Interesting. I had no idea. To me, like a midwife, that just also seems like, just not like your typical medical professional just because of the naming.
I know.
Like, which is
I think there's it's like we definitely need more broader education on midwives because I think that holds people back. Like I do have a fair amount of clients that want to have like this beautiful, you know, birth with no epidural, but they want to be in the hospital. It's just they don't know about midwives, and for whatever reason they're just like they think that midwives maybe aren't as like good as OBs, but they totally are.
Interesting.
They totally are. Yeah.
So you've been a part of a lot of creative birth plans, I'm sure. Do you mind sharing one of the most creative birth plans you've been a part of?
Creative birth plans.
As me as your audience, like a creative birth plan would be like, I'd like to have my child in a bathtub, or or like you'd mentioned, like in the forest by a river, or like something like that. Is creative.
Yeah. Okay.
So sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, but it's funny because to me, it's like that's giving birth in the bathtub is not creative. But
fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like a little bit more unconventional is like, you know, a home birth, right? Like a home birth plan. Like those people do sometimes want to like give birth in the shower or give birth in their bathtubs or, you know, on their beds and things like that. So yeah, I would say that's probably like just about as creative as it gets.
As anything else?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to think about. You're bringing a whole life into the world, which is beautiful. And I think mom should do whatever she wants. Like
totally.
With no judgment. Like she's the one having the baby. Like, I mean, unless I would assume if you're like a high risk pregnancy that perhaps there are better opportunities than others.
For sure. The best midwives out there are going to risk you out of their care if it becomes a situation where it's not safe anymore to deliver at your house, and the hospital becomes the best place for you to deliver. And that happens. And sometimes that happens during pregnancy. Sometimes there are things that they catch well before you go into labor. And that's really the home birth midwives, that's really their goal. They're very, very, they're almost like overly vigilant about your labs and like different things. And they're like, they want to make sure that you are in perfect health to deliver at home, so that your chances of something bad happening are much lower.
Super low.
Yeah. And so they're trying to catch those things. And if they do, it's like, well, unfortunately, it's just your baby has chosen that they want to be born at the hospital. And that's okay. We'll still make it great.
It's still going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any other, no, I wasn't going to ask this.
Ask it.
Okay. Are you familiar with the show Sister Wives?
It's like somewhat, yeah.
Okay, the only reason I know about Sister Wives is because of TikTok, and just watching the shorts, because I don't have the patience to watch. Anyway,
yeah.
There's just so many to keep up with. But anyway, one of the girls had a baby.
Yeah,
and she ate her placenta.
Yeah.
And took a photo. Like the first one she cooked.
Yeah.
The second one, she just took a raw bite out of it. What is your... and I remember watching it, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This seems disgusting. In my opinion, I'm not trying to be offensive.
No,
I just wouldn't be able to... But what's your opinion on eating the placenta?
Yeah.
I can't say it without giggling.
I know. No, I get it. I know. People do it. I would say most people aren't going to raw... take a bite out of their placenta. I've never heard of that. I mean, I'm sure some people do. Obviously they do.
I'm gonna show you after this. It's so weird.
I'm
so strange.
pretty sure. I'm I think I might know what you're talking about. But for the most part, they're not going to do that. But
seems very extreme.
But they will. So most commonly, I see they dehydrate their placenta, and there's companies that do this, and there's actually a good amount of doulas that offer this also. I don't. They dehydrate their placenta, put it in capsules, and ingest it that way.
Oh,
so it's a lot cleaner of a way to ingest your placenta.
Yes.
There is, so I like to be very evidence-based as a doula, and I like to that's part of where that's where I practice out of, from my head. I want to make sure that I'm giving the most accurate information.
Of course.
There's no data on that shows that consuming your placenta does anything.
Okay.
So it might be a placebo effect at best, or I should say at worst. Well, it might be a placebo effect. Okay, so
fair enough. Okay,
people say that consuming your placenta makes helps you regulate your hormones better when you are postpartum, because when you are postpartum, all of your hormones that were really high during pregnancy completely drop off.
Right,
and so it's supposed to help you regulate your hormones a little bit better. There's no data. That's part of the reason there's no data, is because there's no good studies that have ever been done on it.
Sure.
But people say, anecdotally, people say that it definitely they didn't do it with their first, and then they did it with their second, and they felt a lot better with their second. So we have anecdotal evidence. But yeah.
No, I get it. And I think so, having a doula for the postpartum, because of the hormone drop, and as I've kind of gotten into this age where a lot of friends and family are having babies, and postpartum depression is a very real, very serious thing that I feel isn't talked about as much as it should be.
Yeah.
And so having a doula, do you think that as you're helping postpartum, is that part of the emotional care that you're giving as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something that we're trained to look. That picture is so funny. It's something that we're trained to look for. I can kind of spot it in people.
Okay.
Because sometimes you don't realize that you're going through it in the moment.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I've actually heard a lot of stories, and actually me personally, I think I went through really, I think I had really bad postpartum anxiety, which is another one that is really kind of common. And I didn't really know it until I was out of it. And then I looked back and I was like, dang, I was really struggling through that time. So that's definitely something that we look out for. That's also something, if you hire me for birth, we talk about at length during your pregnancy as well.
Awesome.
And we kind of come up with like strategies to like hopefully mitigate the symptoms. A little bit of sadness postpartum is
Sure.
normal. Like that it is normal.
Well, your hormones are, I mean, you're having a huge shift.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's like you're on your period and you're a lunatic and then you're not,
Yeah.
you know, but I would just imagine it would be
It's longer.
wildly
Yeah.
a larger example after
Yeah.
birth.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Not only are you going through the hormonal stuff, but like you're healing physically from birth, like whether you had a C-section or a vaginal birth, like you're going to have some healing to do.
Of course.
Because you were pregnant for almost 10 months
Right.
when you give birth. So you're healing from that. You have the hormone shift. And then especially if you're a first time mom, but really any time, I mean, now you have this tiny little thing
Right.
that can't do anything for itself that you have to keep alive. That's very anxiety inducing.
Oh, yeah.
They do weird things. They breathe funny. They like make these weird noises and you're like, are you okay? So it's a very intense time to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. Because you think about mom and then the hormone and then there's a child
Yeah.
that needs you for literally everything.
Yeah.
And really like, you know, I'm sure partners are happy to help most of the time, but
Yeah.
it's just, I don't think it's the same.
It's not, especially if you're not breastfeeding. Well, I mean, even if you're not breastfeeding, you're still like your milk will come in, so you will have to wean off of that. So that's like another thing.
Right, right.
But especially if you're breastfeeding, it's unrealistic to think that your partner can like do that 50-50 with you. Like it's just unrealistic. Like it's just, and I hope I don't make anybody mad by saying that, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot on the mom. It's just the most on the mom.
Yeah. And so from the time that like baby's born to mom gets a break or like I'm out, like you look back and realize you're out of it, the like anxiety of it. Like how long, I know it's different for everybody, of course, but like in general, how long do you think it takes?
Oh gosh. Like, I mean, so I think they have actually kind of studied like a little bit about this transformation and how long it does take for like the hormones to completely like regulate. There are a lot of factors, but some people, like some experts say that it takes like 2 years.
Wow.
I know. Like until you feel like completely healed from this life experience.
And then some people are having another child with like,
Before that. Yeah. Way before that.
oof.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 2 months when you said 2.
No, I mean like the physical recovery where you're like, if you had, a tear or like, you bleed after childbirth. And so that really should be all done by like 6-ish weeks. But I mean, you're still going to have like weakness in your pelvic floor and you might have scar tissue and like that stuff is going to take time. But it's really like when I say 2 years, I'm talking like the hormonal shift. And then if you're breastfeeding, like really the whole time you're breastfeeding, you're going to still have some residual kind of like hormonal things going on. So sometimes it even takes like if you wean off of breastfeeding, sometimes it takes like 6 more months after that until things are like regulated again and you have your period back and all the things. I know.
It's so it's crazy. Like you're like, there has been some studies done on this. It's like, okay, so all of us had to be born.
I know.
Why is there not more like research and like effort put into understanding the whole process?
Yeah, I know. I wish, like we all wish there was all the studies and all the data like at our fingertips for pregnancy, but there is a little bit of an ethical component because like you know, testing stuff on pregnant women sometimes is a little, so there's that piece of it, right? Like there are like, companies that won't fund studies because they're like, I mean, for example, like if you were to study like marijuana use in pregnancy, how are you gonna like ethically have a good like study that we can actually use with enough people that opt in? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's just one example.
Fair enough.
But so that's honestly a lot of the reason. But I mean, there's also just the fact that women are just understudied in general. And they, a lot of like, this is a kind of an off the wall example, but like our pain medication dosage is like based on like what men need.
Right.
And women actually need more pain medication than men do. This is like something that just came out.
I was reading about this and they were like, no, like women, like our pain tolerance is much higher. And so we need more.
We need more pain medication. We need more anesthesia to put us under and keep us under. So more women wake up during surgeries and things like that. And that is because we are treated like we're men.
And we're not.
And we're not.
It's
not even close.
Literally the exact opposite.
Yeah,
like,
we're cyclical, right? Like we have, different hormones circulating through our blood at any given time of the month.
Right.
And we respond differently to medications and other things.
It is fascinating to me, like truly that when I was reading through that the other day and I was like, you know what, that really makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and then beyond that, there's like the psychology of like, you go to the doctor and you're like, hey, that pain medication, it's really not working. And they're like, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, it's not.
I know. We're not taken seriously.
It's a whole thing. So then having a doula with you too to be like that advocate is just, I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And most
validating.
Yeah.
Like, to sit there and validate like, no, you actually are feeling this or, whatever.
Right. Yeah. Like it really does hurt when you're having contractions. Like I believe you, like, or I would imagine that like dilating can't be comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming like
it's not comfortable. It's not the most comfortable process. No.
Right. None of it seems comfortable. Like even
it's really hard.
Yeah. Even like talking to women who are like in their last last 2 months, last 1 month of pregnancy, they're just like, everything hurts. Mm-hmm. I feel miserable. Yeah. I have to pee all the time. Yeah. Like it just to me, and I'm like, that's just another reason. Like it sounds horrifying to me. But have so much respect for women having children. How do people find you? How do doulas get paid? Are you covered by insurance?
Yeah, we're not covered by insurance.
Okay.
I know that there are some avenues that like people can go through to get doula services covered. There are some corporations, like big companies that will cover things like doulas.
Oh, cool. Like in their benefit package?
Yeah. And sometimes you have to kind of like jump through hoops to get it covered, but worth it, I think. So I'm not super familiar with all of that because that's like different just depending.
Yeah.
No, long story short, no, we're not covered by insurance. You would just pay me directly and that's that. Unless you get it reimbursed. All those things can happen like down the line.
Sure. So like I have not even any way to understand like what a cost would be. So like if a mom needed you and was like, how much does this cost? Like, could you give us a ballpark?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can tell you how much I charge currently.
Yeah. That'd be great.
So if you're watching this in a year, it might be different. But I charge $1,800 for my birth package.
Okay.
And so when you hire me, it's $900 to like secure your spot in my practice.
Okay.
And then the second $900 is due when you're like 36, 37 weeks pregnant. That's my fee schedule, but like I've done creative things with people if they need help or if they need to like do a payment plan or whatever. Like I'm just me. So I'm happy to help wherever is needed. But yeah, and I would say that's pretty standard, that price for like a birth package. In Austin at least, I feel like that's pretty standard what I see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like the postpartum, that's a separate.
That's different. Yeah. For postpartum, it's usually by the hour. And I've honestly seen a huge range of cost for that. I would say anywhere from like $30 an hour to like $60 an hour.
Okay.
And then some people will put together like packages where it's like, I come over to your house 3 days a week for 4 hours. And then that whole package costs like $2,000 for like 2 months or something. That's out of nowhere.
Yeah,
but there's packages like that too.
Got it. And so, but really when you're working with doulas, are you like a one woman business?
Yes.
Okay. So they're working with you. You make the decisions. You're like, of course we can do a payment plan or I can work with you on this. Or does that seem to be pretty standard for doulas?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like at the end of the day, like, we are running a business, so there's that piece of it. But, but yeah, I mean, doulas are like, we love you guys. Like we're soft-hearted. We like want to make sure that you have support. So yes, I would say for the most part, we're pretty like chill and flexible on all that stuff.
You used to be, I think that your past in recruiting is obviously like, you're very easy to talk to. You're like, I'm sure easy to connect with. Like, I'm sure that's been really helpful, like just in like your connection with people, which is really cool. And then obviously business acumen of just doing what you did for a really long time.
Yeah.
I'm sure can't hurt. Yeah,
for sure.
Do you find, have you found success? Or you like growing, you're taking on new clients.
Yeah. Oh, like so great. It's been great from the beginning. Pretty much right away, I also like, I really wanted to be like successful in the beginning. So I was really like hitting the pavement. I was networking. I was becoming a part of other organizations like you guys showed at the beginning before we started Gals, giving Austin labor support. So side note, they provide free doula services to people in the Austin area that qualify. So that is such a unique opportunity for doulas getting started because they need all the help they can get. So that was really, really helpful when I first started. They have an on-call kind of like day-to-day system where they just like somebody is in labor and then they just dispatch whoever, like the doulas that are available to like go to their birth. So in the beginning, I was showing up to births where I had never met this person before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Got it. And wow. So are you like, I'm sure there's a lot of word of mouth and a lot of referrals.
Yeah. It's a good amount of that, but for me specifically, and I think I'm a little bit different than other doulas. I put somewhat of an effort into my social media.
Sure.
So I think I actually get vast majority of my clients right now from social media.
Awesome.
I've been doing this for about a year and a half, so I'm starting to get more referrals. But for a while it was a lot of social media. And then honestly, like I'm just kind of starting to dabble in this neighborhood. Like there's so many people that are pregnant and like it seems like postpartum doula support is really in need here. So that's kind of starting now too, which is great.
I feel like Easton Park is full of expecting moms.
Everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
Come to me.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So like how can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I won't give out my number, but I pretty much blast out my number like on the Facebook groups. Like I don't care if people have my number, but I have a website, birthwithhailey.com, that has a form on it. So you can absolutely fill out that form and get in touch with me. But I also like respond to DMs on Instagram. I will say I do have a Facebook. I don't really put as much like time into that.
Sure.
So don't message me on Facebook. But Birth with Hailey @ Birth with Hailey on Instagram. If you DM me, I get a fair amount of people reaching out to me through Instagram as well.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And at what point does it matter like how far into people's pregnancy they are when they reach out to you?
So that's tricky because since I am a one-man show, I do have limited availability.
Sure.
And I do fill up kind of fast. It kind of comes in waves. But I would say you should aim to have your doula hired by the time you're like 20 weeks pregnant. But there are doulas. There's always new doulas that are coming out, that are popping up and needing clients. And some people are like, 35 weeks. And they're like, I actually want a doula now. So I would say it doesn't matter where you are in your pregnancy. There's going to be somebody for you, hopefully, that you can find.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I would say probably reach out to me by the time you're like 20 weeks, and then I should have availability for you.
And what does that relationship look like? So if someone reaches out to you at 20 weeks, like what does that look like from 20 weeks to birth?
Yeah. So I am available via like phone or text from the time you hire me. So honestly, even if you don't hire me, I'm like, I'll still chat with you. Like, sure. It's fine. Like if you don't end up hiring any doula, like I want to make sure that you have support. So I make myself available for really anyone who wants it.
Awesome.
So I'm available and I'm on call usually for other births. So I am available like overnight too, which sometimes like I've had people, I don't necessarily encourage it all the time to reach out to me at 3 a.m, but if you're like dealing with like bleeding or something and you're like super scared, like definitely reach out to me.
Yeah.
So basically, long story short, I'm available anytime via phone. And then we start, so I do 2 prenatal meetings. So 2 meetings with my clients while they're pregnant. Mm-hmm. One towards the end of the 2nd trimester and one kind of like middle of the 3rd trimester. Mm-hmm. And those are like very lengthy appointments with me. We talk about the first one, we focus all on your birth. The second one, we focus on your postpartum. So we come up with like a birth plan and then a postpartum plan. And we do a lot more than that, but that's just kind of the long and short of it there. And then again, available via phone from that point. And then whenever you are in labor, I can support you virtually, like via text, until you're ready for me to come out. And I don't put a time limit on my services, and for better or for worse. But so basically, my clients are always like, when should I call you when I'm in labor? And I'm like, really just like whenever you feel like you need me, like whenever you feel like it, I'll come out. And I labor at home with a lot of my clients, and then we all go to the hospital together. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and like that's probably super helpful, especially for first times when they're like, when do we go? Is now the time? And you might be like, let's stay here and stay cozy.
Yeah.
Go later.
Yeah. If you're asking me like with a smile on your face, like, so should we go? Like, it's probably too early.
Oh, that's a good like indicator. Like, you're not wincing yet. So we're good.
You're too chatty. You're too chatty right now.
Oof.
Yeah.
Have you been a doula to any moms here in Easton Park?
I have.
Okay. How many do you think?
I think 2. Okay. One is already given birth, and then another one is coming up. So.
Amazing. Yeah. That's really cool. Are you part of the moms group?
I am. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love this. Yeah. I love Easton Park.